everybody here could look at the Democratic candidates and think, well, there's somebody like me. Or there's somebody that doesn't fit the mold of what American presidents look like. I think I can do that in 25 years. You can't do that with Republicans. They look like 1950s television. They really do. If you are of color, if you're a woman, if you're gay or lesbian, where is your place in the Republican Party? Where was your place in 1950s television, except for some stereotypical role? So that's the first problem the Republicans have. They've systematically and sequentially insulted just about every ethnic group in America in order to win elections, to scapegoat people. Great election politics, really crummy for the country. But the second thing that is extraordinary about your generation, which is why this is such a critical election, because you have a candidate now who thinks like your generation, not so much like my generation. He really is the candidate of the future. When I got to Washington, we had a couple of great things in the Democratic Party. One was we had a brand new building which was completely paid for. We used to have to rent from a Republican landlord at the DNC. This is the truth. And the other was we had no debt, which is unheard of after a presidential election. But on the other hand, we had no political operation, no technology worthy of the name of the building. And we didn't know how to talk to the American people, and we were only in half the states in the country. So we fired all the consultants in Washington, who we paid a lot of money to tell us how to lose every year. And we hired a 34-year-old African-American pollster named Cornell Belcher, who now polls for Senator Obama. Because he was the only Democratic pollster that I could find who knew that Americans voted on their values and not based on a series of issues. The average people didn't vote on your 97-point plan for health care or whatever it is. They voted on what kind of a person they thought that you were. And then I looked around and thought, what model can we use to talk to the American people? Now, I'm the first to tell you that I think the Republicans are completely incompetent in terms of how they run the country. They certainly know how to win elections, so our model was the Republican National Committee. We copied everything we could from the Republican National Committee except for the cheating and the divisive rhetoric, of course. But there was one thing I really wanted to copy, and I couldn't copy it, because we're Democrats. And that was their top-down command and control organization structure. Democrats think very independently. I can remember getting talking points from the DNC when I was lieutenant governor. I'd look at it and say, well, I don't like that one. Well, I think this one should be first. I'll make my own talking points. That's the way we are. We're independent-minded people, thoughtful. We think other people have good ideas. We don't mind fighting about our ideas. That's the way we are. It's fun to be a Democrat. But it's not disciplined. And I used to rack my brains on how I could figure out how to organize this party in that kind of top-down command and control structure. And about 3 months ago, I was walking along the street in Washington, and I suddenly realized that if you're under 35, if you're in your generation, unless you served in the military, or the police department, or the fire department, you have no experience in the top-down command and control organization. Because you don't fit like big cogs in the machines. People don't hire you to do that anymore. You either start your own enterprise and fail a few times, like everybody who starts their own small business, or you go to work for somebody who wants your brains and figures out thinks you can figure out the rest. You go to work for a hedge fund, they don't hire MBAs. They can if they want to, but they hire philosophy members and physics majors and physics majors. Why? They're smart people, and you think they're going to be able to figure out what to do. Same with IT and a whole lot of other things. And then I realized that the Republicans have an even bigger problem than I thought. Not only do they not look like the rest of America looks anymore, like anything like your generation, but they don't think like your generation. They think in the old corporate top-down management style, and much as it's attractive to people like me to want to be better organized, there's something organic about the way things happen in your age group, partly because of the internet, and partly because of the connections you made, and partly because of who you grew up with, which were very different, for the most part, than who we grew up with. Even though we have not nearly realized the dream of Martin Luther King, the society looks a lot more like what Dr. King was talking to today than it does 40 years ago. So I want to conclude with this. You are to whom much is given, much is expected. And we expect a lot of you. But I have something, my father once told me this, of course I was about 23 when he told me I didn't pay any attention, but it did stick with me, so I must have paid some attention. I have one thing that you don't have. I can look backwards as well as forwards. And you are mostly going to look forwards. And what I'm sitting here thinking today, 40 years ago, Robert Kennedy was assassinated after he had just won the California primary, which I lived through. I lived through Martin Luther King's assassination. I was a freshman in college at the time. And I look back over my lifetime, which really was almost exactly 40 years ago, and think about this. And whoever thought in those times of strife, when we were fighting so hard and so discouraged about what our government was doing, and the lies they were telling about Vietnam, and their lack of courage in making sure that equal rights applied to every single American. And today, we're about to nominate an African American for President of the United States, and not think much about it. And the funny thing about your age is, somebody once was telling me the story. They talked to somebody, a bunch of young people, about why they like Barack Obama. And they said something about race, and they said, well, race doesn't really enter into it. We just think he's cool. Isn't that what Dr. King wanted? Well, I remember what it was like when it wasn't like that. And we never thought that, I never thought that 40 years later I would be sitting in front of a group of people your age about to nominate the next president of the United States based on all that went before. What you have done is extraordinary, and you don't even realize it, which is fine with us, because there's much made of people my age that you should learn from the lessons of history and understand what went before, and you should. It's an intellectual exercise, and it's important for you to know how we got to this place. But it is also important, I think, not to get too hung up on that. It is a good thing that women take their rights for granted. It is a good thing that young African Americans make assumptions about how they should be treated like everybody else and not think about it. It is a good thing that more and more gay and lesbian and bisexual and transgender young people expect to be treated equally. Because the fact of the matter is, you get treated in this life the way you expect to be treated for the most part. And the battles have been about changing the mindset about how you're going to be treated personally, and then standing up to be treated the way you expect to be treated, and forcing other people to acknowledge who you are as an independent person, and then you get treated the way you should be treated. That is a battle that everybody in some way, the struggle always continues. The struggle never goes away. And your generation will find whatever that struggle is. Some of you already have. You are basically taking this country back to be the kind of extraordinary model of democracy that it has not been for the past 8 years. I tell high school kids, and once in a while I go to speak to a high school audience, and I say, you have to understand, this is not normal. Everybody so laughs because they think I'm making fun of Bush. What's happened in the last 8 years in this country is not normal. We don't normally have attorneys general who fire lawyers and United States attorneys for doing their job and defending people's right to vote, whether they're Republican or Democrat. We don't normally have presidents that are so partisan that they put incompetent people in offices everywhere because of their ideology and having nothing to do with whatever their qualifications. This is not a normal time in America. What we are asking your generation to do, and what you are doing, working harder than anybody could have dreamed, is to really make the change. And the real change will only happen when Barack is president. Thanks very much.
Actually, ladies and gentlemen, if you could all please stay in your seats. Governor Dean has a very busy schedule, so we're just going to allow him to get out of here. And the one